The previous COVID lockdown from February till August 2020 was undeniably daunting, frustrating and economically destructive. The negative impact of the lockdown crippled many nations' economies, businesses, governments and organizations around the world. The losses experienced during that period till present should make governments of every nation look towards a second phase of COVID lockdown positively with a futuristic and projectile analysis of the state of their nation's citizenry and economy. Through research, we have put together a 400-page comprehensive guide handbook, titled, Eradicate Against COVID-19. The End of COVID, which will be made available online in many languages by the Save the World Against COVID-19 project, dedicated to the World Health Organization and the United Nations. This guide is a must-read handbook, recommended to every Center for Disease Control all over the world to help ascertain the true presence of COVID in their nations, so as to advise their leaders correctly. Now that there is a second wave of COVID and its variant, we must equip ourselves to fight the virus to the last. After our research, we have concluded that the wisest and best approaches that should be followed by every nation around the world in this imminent lockdown is to shut down every international airport, seaport and land borders that not even ants are allowed to cross. Save the World Against COVID-19 project simply suggests that every nation use the middle of February to the end of April 2021 to ascertain their COVID statuses as enshrined in this handbook. After every nation must have ascertained their COVID statuses, nations that did not see a surge in COVID can ease their airports, seaports and borders only to the nations that have not seen a new surge in COVID or its variant. Important. Nations that have not experienced a surge in COVID shall completely avoid trips to the nations with cases of COVID. Nations without COVID can reopen schools, markets, shops, ministry, judiciary, transportation, places of worship like churches, mosques, etc. and other major activities to go on as usual, while keeping safe till COVID is systematically extinct globally without risk of further infections, whereas their focuses shall remain at their arriving migrants and returning nationals. Nations with COVID should lock down completely and follow up the recommended processes in this book. This book can keep every nation safe from COVID even in the midst of COVID. It might interest you to know that over 80% of the COVID tests positive results recorded around the world since January 2020 till date reported false positives. What do we mean by false positive? From our research we found out that most of those false positive results were as a result of non-accurate materials circulated for COVID testing. Some materials previously used for these tests are advised to be re-examined. There have been speculations that COVID-19 is a higher level of malaria parasite and thereby claiming that malaria is somewhat associated with COVID-19. Why we totally disagree with a few medical experts who are convinced that malaria is the lower level of COVID and that COVID is the highest level of malaria is because malaria parasite is not a virus. Coronavirus is different from malaria. According to recent reports, many COVID patients have recovered from the virus, but those that were fortunate to beat the virus at its earliest stage are at the higher risk of a regrowth, which is the COVID plus, because they are not sure of what treated them and are not sure if it remained in them. As a precautionary measure, avoid being trapped by COVID-19, the severe acute respiratory syndrome, cough type 2. Importantly, it is impossible for malaria parasite to grow to any extent that can cause any level of embolism of a vascular system. All day-to-day temperature tests which we conduct with infrared thermometers have also proved that high level of fever is not enough to determine a presence of COVID. It also depends on one's T and B cells. Some people might have COVID and you won't know until they infect you. Their temperatures may not even go too high, mainly when it is at a window level, making it hard to detect. If you analyze positively, you would know that as at today nearly 1% of the world's population have done COVID test and the majority of the tests were done with poor materials. On this note, we should put our hands together in the fight to defeat and eradicate COVID. In regards to this effort, we are determined to give every support to the World Health Organization and the United Nations that have been battling COVID from the beginning till date. We are hopeful that as our anti-COVID herbal drugs are going through serial fractionations under pharmacognosy protocol, We offer it for free to the WHO to start going through scientific and clinical trials by the WHO at no cost on the patients before the end of July 2021. Having considered the extreme modes of transmission of COVID, it is paramount that people avoid exchange of carbon dioxides by closer range situations due to some nanoparticles that may accompany some released carbon dioxides. Individuals with open sores on their skins should avoid the COVID droplets by ensuring that their sores are hygienically covered. Learn the A to Z of the precautionary measures from this book so as to survive even in the midst of COVID. Having known the extreme channels that COVID transmits even at death, we have produced some gadgets embalmment protocols to arrest any cranial fluid emanating from a COVID corpse, as we look forward to the cure. It is imperative that nations ravaged by the pandemic avail themselves the opportunity to get vaccinated to help reduce further spread of COVID in their nations. Grab your free copy of Eureka Against COVID-19 Handbook today or download for free and gain more insights on how to tackle this deadly virus, including the special cosmetics and PPEs. As we await the clinical trials of the herbal remedies which we anticipate will be made available to the general public for free before the end of 2021 through the WHO. Importantly, donations shall be accepted towards the funding of mass production of our anti-COVID PPEs, cosmetics and herbal drugs which will be distributed worldwide for free. Special thanks go to every individual and organization who have worked immensely to help keep our world safe in these tough times. The World Health Organization, Dr. Michael J. Ryan. The United Nations Secretary General Mr. Antonio Guterres. God bless you all and may God save the world.